G'day everybody, and for those who've come in late, you're listening to Expand the Phantom Podcast.
He washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck, and upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die." The Phantom, the ghost who walks. The Phantom, enemies beware. The Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom. He finds you.
Hello, we are the Chronicle Chamber team, and this is Expand the Phantom Podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com, and you can contact us via our email, which is chroniclechamber@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to our podcasts via YouTube, iTunes, or the various Android apps. This is episode 196, and we've decided to expand on something. Now, we've all made mention of this on our podcast countless times, and I'm sure you listeners have when you've had conversations with other Phantom fans, when you've read comics, or even while you're listening to us as well. So we've decided to go one step further and see if we can actually create the Phantom Bible, I guess is what we will probably call this podcast, or maybe the Phantom elements that make up the Phantom Bible. So anyway, we'll get into that conversation. So I'm Jermaine, and I'm joined by not one, not two, but three Phantom fans from around the world in Australia who are going to try and accomplish the impossible. So this will be fun. Dan, how are you, mate?
I'm very good, Joan. Very good. Excited to be here. You're right. We've talked about and around this so many times over the years. Really, I'm actually looking forward to getting into this conversation. I feel like it could be the first of. I don't know if we're going to rival. What was the 50-parter? Clayton Matthews. 50
Heart of Darkness.
Heart of Darkness. Yeah, sorry. Slip of the mind. I don't think we're going to rival Heart of Darkness with the amount of episodes on this, but it could be the first of a series, I suspect.
Yeah, I think you could be right, and I'm looking forward to where it takes us. Stephen, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. I've just been, as you've been talking and that sort of stuff, I've been jotting down a few notes here, and I'm realizing it's getting away from me even before we start. So this could be interesting.
Yeah, we're going to try and limit ourselves to an hour, knowing that an hour means an hour and a half.
Because I was tired earlier. I thought, I should make some notes before we start. And then I was just tired and couldn't be bothered. And so I thought, I'll jot down a few down here. Oh, hang on, this list is getting big. You said 4 or 5. And I'm doing a Jermaine here. I think I'm up to about a dozen. But I've got them in sections. I've got the person. I've got different areas of it.
It is. Very quickly, first of all, let me introduce Mikkel. Mikkel's coming from Sweden.
It's already getting away from us.
Yeah, now we wanted Mikkel because how you going, Mikkel?
I'm fine. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for joining us. Mikkel's been in a lot of this conversation, and he has some great input in the sense that he is a devoted fan, produced Phantom merchandise, helps with the Phantom Men comic and stuff like that as well. But Mikkel, you also help provide a little bit of a different angle. You're not an Aussie. Well, you're a half an Aussie. You eat a lot of Aussie food and stuff like that as well, mate. We just wanted to kind of get some input. So I appreciate you joining us, Mikkel.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, this is a great subject, and I guess you wanted someone who is not a folkist, maybe. So we are more balanced here.
Yeah. Well, it's just different views. We come, different culture. We know Queensland is kind of like its own little has its own little kind of element.
We're the deep woods up here, mate. Queensland is thick with Phantom fans, and we are in many ways the heart of Phantom fans in Australia. And I probably just got every Victorian upset with me.
Yeah, I don't know about deep woods. I reckon backwoods, but.
Oh, very good.
I shouldn't do this when I'm tired. I just can't.
Very good. But I guess the point we're making is that, Dan's probably the resident folkist. Stephen's probably, typically the one sitting on the fence. And then, Mikkel.
You say that, but lately you've been doing that a lot more, and I've been a bit more stronger in what I say.
Yeah, that's true. So it's good just to have like different different opinions, different background to the Phantom, different how we read the comic, where we've read it, our background and stuff like that. So I think this could be a good discussion. It's good to not just be a bunch of Aussies discussing it, because this is a worldwide comic. So now, one of the reasons why I personally wanted to do this podcast, and I know this has been a podcast that I've been wanting to do for a while, and we've on purpose had to kind of hold back, and it's kind of been a little bit hard, and my fellow podcast members here would agree that they've had to rein me in a little bit at times. Is because when we did our podcast with KFS, T talked about their Bible. Now, personally, and I'm not sure about you guys, but I was a bit disappointed with the way her Bible was. Do you guys remember that podcast?
I remember the podcast. I can't remember quite about the Bible though.
Just because, yes, we were all part of the conversation. I haven't gone back and listened to it. I remember the feeling I had at the time. But can you refresh, because there'll be people listening to us now who didn't have to listen to that. So, what was her take on the Bible? You'll have the best memory of it, I reckon.
So, mate, that's putting me on the spot there. So she was kind of talking about the way the fan, not really the fans, but it wasn't. When I was listening to her talking about it, I was listening to it and it's not like, oh yeah, that's the Phantom. It was kind of like a very generic hero way the hero behaves and stuff. And it could have been any hero. It could have been Batman, it could have been Spider-Man, it could have been, Thor. It wasn't very Phantom-like. And from when I think of the Phantom's not just a generic hero. We've all said that in the past, haven't we, guys? That, the Phantom's, he's a hero. He's, like what Billy Zane says, is that he's, he's not superhero. He's superhumane, and I feel there wasn't a focus on the Phantom of the characters we love. And in my opinion, this is the reason why we end up with the crap. And I'm going to use the word crap. That Dynamite,
and that's a strong word because you don't swear.
Yeah. The way that Dynamite, what we got from Dynamite and Herms in the last 5 to 10 years is utter tripe. And if that is because of the Bible that T talked about, there needs to be a redefining of what the Phantom Bible is, in my opinion. Now, I've also read the new Mandrake series, and that was very far removed from the classic strip as well.
Yeah,
now,
very much.
I'm not a Mandrake super fan. I've read Mandrake comics. I've, watched Defenders of the Earth. I've, read enough Mandrake comics to know what Mandrake is. And that Mandrake series, and Stephen, you've read the series as well, and you've made these comments as well. It was very far removed from who the classic strip is. And
I when we were discussing this a couple of weeks ago, though I haven't read much Doctor Strange. I've seen the Marvel movies, and it seemed more in that ilk rather than a Mandrake ilk.
Yeah, it was kind of like, oh, Doctor Strange is popular. What's a character? Oh, Mandrake. Oh, Mandrake the magician. Oh, there's a magician. Doctor Strange is a magician. Let's do a alternate version of Doctor Strange. And I'm sure there was a lot more to it than that, and I'm sure I'm going to offend some people and stuff like that. But I was excited about the comic series. I read it, and I'm like, yeah, no, this is not Mandrake. So I guess with Marvel and DC and these larger comic characters like Superman, Spider-Man, Batman, and stuff like that, you have the super fans, which, let's face it, we're super fans, who help direct the ship where it goes, and then you have your editorial staff, and you have, which help they direct. They have a very strict Bible of the way the Phantom behaves. But in my opinion, it seems that KFS are more concerned to ensure he doesn't kill a rhino, or that the bad guy doesn't have a stereotypical bad guy beard, which could be offensive to some people. And they seem to be more concerned about that than actually concerned about making sure the Phantom is who we believe the Phantom is. Now, I'm not saying that's not a bad thing, because yes, we can't offend people, and we need to make sure that the Phantom is a protector of wildlife and stuff like that. I understand all that, but the Phantom has to be somewhat recognisable for all generations and all fans. And there has been no proper oversight for the past 80 odd years. And Now, this bit is going to offend some people. Hence,
You've already offended.
while you have while you're going to have a smiling Cybari Phantom, then you've got your dark, gritty pulp, more like Phantom, and then you've got your childish style McCoy Phantom, and then you go over to Dynamite. And,
What do you mean by childish?
And Herms, which is a version of either Punisher or a Tarzan in purple tights. There needs to be some direction in the way that our Phantom comics have been produced, and at the moment, I don't believe that there is a proper Phantom Bible, and that's the reason why I want to do this podcast. And that's the reason why, to me, it is important that we list some Phantom elements and that we start the conversation, whether we create the Phantom Bible or not. But I believe that there needs to be a direction so that every Phantom story has some Phantom elements in it, so that way it's recognisable for everyone. So that's me getting on my pulpit on why we believe we need to do this podcast.
What do you mean by childish? I read that.
Okay, so childish is in the sense of that's a very loose term. So when a lot of Phantom fans look at McCoy and they call it childish in the simplicity, the way it's drawn, the stories are very childish compared to a Moy, a Ray Moore style and stuff like that. I don't like using the word childish, but I use the word childish because that's how a lot of people do it. It's the same as like a smiling Cy Barry. When people think of Cy Barry, they think of a smiling Phantom. So it's a very stereotypical representation of those three main artists.
Well, I'm going to take great umbrage to childish, to be honest.
Yep, that's fine.
Because you may be right. Maybe there are lots of fans who do think it's childish, but there are lots of fans who don't.
Yes.
So,
yes. And I completely agree with you. But, in saying that, if you look at the style of stories, there's a lot of simplistic, childish version stories in there compared to...
Simplistic might be a better word to say than
childish. Yeah. Okay, maybe we'll use simplistic. But I believe this podcast is going to... will offend some, and it will unearth a few feelings. So let's get started with...
We're done already.
Let's get started with the four of us.
Mikel, I've taken a bunch of notes on things I want to argue with about from what Jermaine said from his little monologue there earlier. But where's your take on this? Because Jermaine would probably align himself with Team Phantom and that sort of thing as much as anything, Jermaine. I'm not wrong when stating that. So where do you stand, Mikel?
I mean, if I start with the Bible, I mean, I think the most important thing for me is the lore, to not go away from the lore, and the style of the art is not as important. And I think about the new Mandrake, I thought it was quite okay, actually, the new Mandrake comic book. But I'm not a Mandrake fan at all, so I'm not sure how far away it goes, because my issue with Mandrake, when I read it as a side comic in Fantomen, is that it seems sometimes he's just an illusionist, and sometimes he can do magic, and it seems like every other story it's different rules. So that has made me not read Mandrake.
And that's an example of the sort of lore that you've got to keep to, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very good point. So I guess for you, Mikel, why do you think having a Phantom Bible or Phantom Elements or Phantom Lore, whatever word terminology you want to use, why is it important to you? Is it for the stories or?
Yeah, I mean, for me to really enjoy a story, it has to not contradict something that was in a story before. And I don't want them to say 20 years ago the Skull Cave got destroyed, but we have no proof of that happening, and it's just some weird add-on, or that he just disappeared. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues over the years, since it's been going on for many years, and maybe it needs to have a stricter Bible to follow. Because
I know that this stuff was really important to you as you were putting the game together, because yes, the game's got some really cool sculptures and a lot of nice artwork and stuff in it, but it also tells a story, and you have clearly sticked very hard to making sure that you've got some key fandom elements as part of that. Would having a Bible like what we're talking about have made that easier?
Yeah, of course. And I mean, with the internet and such, it would be great to have like we have the Phantom Wiki. That's a great resource. But if they would have at least inside the KFS to have something like that, but with the lore, like these are the characters that are from this tribe, and these, when creating the worlds, it would be greater to already have all this that has happened written down to search through and get images of, or at least see which stories have images of them.
Yeah, and I guess for like creators, like, you know, like we in the comics and news, we talked about with Duncan how he's a super fan. We all know who Duncan is. He wrote the stories.
He's actually just messaged me.
But you know, like he wrote the recent stories, and we talked about how there was all those little phantom elements, I guess, in the story that we enjoyed and picked up on. Now, not every creator that is going to be coming with the Phantom is going to be coming from that type of background. So I guess this is where I also see is that the Phantom Bible is important, because then it's kind of like, you know, Joe Bloggs has been, you know, commissioned to write a Phantom story, but he's never written a Phantom story. He's only ever written a handful of comics before. You can give him this Bible, and then he can have an understanding of who the Phantom is, that he is not Punisher. He is not Batman. He is not a Tarzan in purple tights. He is, you know, this is who the Phantom, this is why he's different from these type of characters.
He's completely unique in the comics.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
You know, maybe there are, I don't know the characters in the Marvel and the DC universes, for instance, anywhere near well enough to know for an absolute fact, but is there some crossover between some characters in those areas? Like, as long as you're pretty close with writing a Punisher, then you're also kind of this other character as well?
There's probably elements and parts, like, you know, he has, you know, we know that Batman has been influenced by the Phantom in the sense of, you know, working in the shadows and you know, and stuff like that. And then I guess, you know, Punisher uses a skull, and Tarzan's a friend of, you know, and stuff like that. So there's going to be the crossovers and stuff like that, but it's not like you've got, you know, in some DC and Phantom, you know, in DC and Marvel universes, there's like, you know, a character that could quite easily fit in any of them, or there's the one character that's kind of got two different names in two different universes. And, you know, I'm not a huge reader and not probably qualified to comment too much, but he's a unique hero, which we've all agreed with, and I think that's why we all like it. So, you know, I guess, yeah. You guys got anything to add to why you think a Bible or is important?
Yeah, just a couple of things, and I guess they're tied together that you said earlier, Jim, and we discussed, you know, your characterization of McCoy's art, but the fact that I think you've got to be careful with this in a sense, because you don't want to be too dictatorial either. Because I think one of the charms of the Phantom, and as speaking as someone who came in late, if you like, in the 80s, and so those three big artists that you talked about were in high rotation. To be fair, through those were the three that you read all the time, and I liked all three depictions. And so if you're saying, oh, you know, in the past there's been no proper oversight, and that's why we've got a Smiling Sigh, a gritty more and a more simple McCoy, I think they're all perfectly valid. So you've got to be really careful not to, and I think we're talking about the art there, is what Mikkel said before. And I think maybe that's the concern we had with T's comments through KFS, because she came across as talking more about the art and what it was depicted and showed, not so much about the writing and the tropes and the elements to an extent. That was probably where I came away a little bit unsatisfied, and maybe that was T just not going down that path, or not asking the right questions. But yeah, that's where I see this conversation going. What are those key tropes, elements, you know, those elements of uniqueness.
Yeah, and you make a brilliant point. Like Ray Moore, Cy Barry, Wilson McCoy, they all had elements like, you know, when the Phantom moves, lightning stands still. You know, Jungle Sayings, the Phantom Oath. You know, they all had all those elements, but like you're saying, they're very, very vastly different
Yes, no,
drawings.
I wouldn't want to create or suggest anything that locked art styles out, because we've talked about lots of different art styles across the journey, and especially since Frew have started employing some new Australian artists, and we always comment about the artists that Tim Farnterman uses as well. So and we love the variety. So we're certainly not. I don't think this is a conversation about art so much at all.
Art's subjective. Like, you have your favorite artists, and they have a different take on the characters, the way that they position them and how they draw them. And but I don't think that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the things that they draw, like what's actually in the story, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. What's in the story, the tropes in the story, the writing, the way they depict things and stuff like that. Like a good example is Dr. Axel. He has, and I'm not sure whether a lot of Phantom fans are actually aware of this, but in the period of in the 70s or 80s, I can't remember, he was actually drawn as a black man, as an African man, where in other times he's Swedish or Scandinavian. Is, what is it, Dr. Bjorn Axel? Yeah, you know, that's as wide as you're going to get. You know what I mean? But in a couple of times he's been drawn as an African man, and you know, so that's a glaring, obvious depiction that, you know, if there was a Phantom Bible of saying, okay, like I can't remember who set up, but you were talking about someone's picking it up and you get it from KFS. Oh, I need to draw Dr. Axel. Is he African? Is he white? And then you kind of go to the encyclopedia, I guess you can call it. There's a picture of Dr. Axel. There's a brief 1 paragraph word about him or whatever like that. And then you know how to draw him. You know, you could create a story about him, and then it's got a list of stories, you know, and that's getting way to the end, to the finished product. But, you know, like a creator is able to know who this character is, you know, without either having to find it themselves or getting it totally wrong and colouring, you know, and him being, you know, the wrong nationality.
Yeah, well, again, I guess I would want to be open to change in that sense too, because that variation you've described, I think, you know, there'd be lots of fans out there who prefer the idea of Dr. Axel as a local African man who's been educated, and who knows what background he's got through his tribe, and then come back as a GP or what have you. So, you know, that might be an instance where a creator or a publication team could come back into KFS and say, look, we know that this is what you've got here, but what if there was this change? And then the Bible changed in a sense. So, you know, there was an update there.
Hang on. Testing 1, 2. Was that Dan just talking about changing a huge element like that? The traditionalist focus out of the group is. Yeah, sorry, did I hear right?
This is where the conversation will go, I guess, because I wouldn't have that anywhere near my, you know, the nationality of Dr. Axel. He's not in my top 100 probably.
It was just an example at the top.
I'm just saying that would be something where, you know, of course there's other things. Oh, could I change the fact that he doesn't swear on the skull anymore? It's a donut. No, of course not. You know, that's important. The Dr. Axel's nationality doesn't bother me too much.
I guess it's just like one of those small, easy, silly mistakes that, well, not silly, but an easy mistake that has kind of slipped through. Because there is not
even a mistake. Like, it's just something that someone did.
Well, I think it is a mistake, because
what was he for starters?
He was white.
All right.
And then he turned back to white after a couple of years. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that is a mistake. But I guess that's not really where we want to kind of focus.
No, but I guess
it's just an example of a change that has happened.
Yeah, that's fine, and that's where I think we need to start moving into. Well, what are some of the things? Because we've been introducing stop the conversation with 20 minutes now. So, which has been really important. I think it's been really important to frame what we're talking about. I've got a clearer understanding now than I did, when we were planning.
Okay, cool.
So what are the non-negotiables? If someone was saying, right, here we are, this is the Phantom. You now have to write a Phantom story. Oh, right. So what are the non-negotiables? Let's start with those rather than wondering.
Okay,
what
Stephen.
is. Yeah?
So tell me, you've got 5. Let's go. Your top 5. Now,
top 5.
you raise a good point, Stephen. That like you could probably in a 10-minute sitting down, you can probably come up with 20.
I've got it.
How many have you got
now.
with? Yeah,
just while you've been talking, I've been busy typing. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40.
Podcast
41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, at least 46.
Okay, so you've got 50, all right? I was thinking maybe 20, but so
document you can number a list, Steve.
Yeah. But the point I'm making is that we could quite easily come up with, obviously Stephen's come up with close to 50 without even really thinking that hard about it, and he talked about how tired he was as well. So there's a lot of elements that make our hero. Now we're not going to go through all our top 50 because even we'll be bored listening to that podcast and doing that podcast. So we're going to list our top 5, and then what we're going to do is just have a bit of a chat about it, and then we're going to, we've asked some Phantom fans in the past couple of weeks or month as we've been planning that, and we're going to list a couple of theirs, and then we're just going to leave it there, and then we're going to open it up for discussion for everyone else. So Stephen, do you want to give us your top 5?
Rightio. My top one is probably about 3 or 4 of what I've just said wrapped into one. It's all got to do with the oath. Okay, it goes on. Well, traditionally it's been father to son. Will it go to Heloise? If it goes another direction, we'll see at the moment. But at the moment, the Phantom has been going for 400 to 500 years, depending on what decade you're reading it, and in my mind, only very few people should know that he is not 400 or 500 years old. One being Diana, Banda, and probably Luaga. There might be a couple more that might be able to slip into that, but very few people should know that he's but very few people should know that he's not actually 400 to 500 years old. Yeah. And that seems to be something that kind of crept into a lot of stories. Well, I feel it's crept into a fair few stories lately, is that people seem to know, oh yeah, you say you're 400, 500, but we all know that you're not. The reader knows that he's not 400 to 500 years old. The people in the story should not know that he's not 400, 500. There should be that element of, for lack of something better to say, but supernatural.
The secret of the oath. Yeah.
So the oath is all wrapped up into that, and him being the 21st generation, and it's brought down from father to son. And then in saying that family is important, he needs to have a wife, he needs to have children in order for this to come along. So the Phantom is a family man because it's important to the character, because otherwise the character doesn't become there can be no 22nd, there can be no 23rd.
Now, would you class the family man aspect, which totally agree with, as part of the oath, which is the most important, or is that your second one?
I've kind of wrapped it up into one because the oath, because it's part of the oath that it says my oldest son shall follow me. So it's all, I feel it's wrapped up in the oath. The oath comes.
Yep.
It encompasses all that I've just said.
Yep, that's good. So what's your second one, mate? That's a very good start.
Thank you. Well, now there's a few branches you could go off, but when you think of the Phantom, it's the ring, all right, or the rings, I should say. And wrapped up in that is very minimal costume changes as well. I missed the last podcast where you started talking about the Sunday episode, the Sunday story, where there have been some quite drastic changes to the costume in official, now we can say this is official because it's Tony DePaul and it's in the newspaper. At first, yeah, okay, that was nice. I didn't mind a change, but as it's gone on, I don't like it. I like it how everyone thinks it's the 400 years old because he looks the same or very, very similar. Like there'll be some minor differences with the boots or the weapons that he uses. But one constant that's got a, well, I'm going to say purple, but if you're in Sweden, you're going to say blue. Whatever color your country had him, that's the color he always has been. That's fine. I'm cool with that. If you say he's grey, cool. He's always grey. The color actually hasn't gone into my list here. The color I don't think is as important but the costume's got to look like the costume and the ring. But the rings have got to be right. The skull ring on the right hand. I don't care what finger it's on, and it marks the bad guy, and it doesn't come off, or it doesn't come off until he changes his way. There's been some stories on that. It might come off. I don't know if it ever has. I think it's always.
But I like how it's kind of like, it might come off, it may not. It's that mystery element.
It's not
the
old mystery thing. And the good mark is for protection, and always on the left hand, and it's on the left hand because it's closest to the heart. Reason why you got a wedding ring on that hand as well. So I'm putting that the number 2, so the rings and
the outfit,
and then an argument for the costume as well as number 2. Number 3, eyes. You can't see them. You can't see his eyes. They're whited out. It's always been, and hasn't always been followed in some stories. And whoever does it gets absolutely torn a new one. Very hard to do in the 1996 movie, but I think we can forgive them for that. But if a new movie was to be made today, well, we've seen what they've been able to do with Deadpool. You can white out the eyes now, so you can't see his eyes. That's because to look on the naked face of the Phantom is you're going to die a gruesome and horrible death unless he wants you to, which Diana and his family. So that's number 3. Number 4, I'm going to say highly tuned jungle senses. For example, sight is in tracking and hearing. However, not as good as the Bandar or Devil. So it's really, really good, but it's not. But the Bandar are better than him, and he's no mountain wolf. So people shouldn't be able to creep up. But still, people shouldn't be able to creep up behind him and donk him on the back of the head. All right, because he's got these highly tuned jungle senses, which also work if he's in the city.
I can't believe you managed to get that wheelbarrow in here. Well done.
What am I after? Is that 3 or 4?
Yeah, and would you also say that's kind of like can be in like hold his own in a fight and
so he's very athletically gifted. I've got between he'd be taller than 6, probably at the most 6'6". I don't know, an imposing figure, athletically gifted, but has no superpowers.
Yeah.
I
like that one.
Yeah.
So that's number 4. One more, Steve. One more.
Oh, crikey. I could go on forever. No, let someone else have a go. It's all right.
Okay, so we'll leave with Steve.
Unless people want to discuss those ones yet. Or
Okay. All right. Mikkel, do you want to go next, my friend?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Stephen took up many good points.
I think this is your top 5. So if there's ones that the other has said, I think you say we just don't need to spend 5 minutes discussing it, which means
and I mean the oath and the rings are I mean they are so given. I would add like he's what's the right word, like super ethical. He never does anything wrong. He always do the right thing, and but at the same time he's not gritty. Like he could get angry, but he's never like gets so pissed so he just names someone or something. He always have restraint and all quite often he instead makes a joke on the roughneck's expense. So that's 4. maybe.
So the joke's your fourth one, like got that humor element.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I would say like the deep woods. I mean the Skull Cave, the Bandars, the whole where he lives is very very much a part of him.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be the same if he was living in a skyscraper.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good one. All right, Dan, buddy. You got 5? How many? I've seen you writing and writing and writing. How many have you got?
I've only jotted down probably 8. And
Yeah.
I'm looking at my hand, Stephen, so I can't tally them as I go. But
Oh,
Go
poor
on.
Stephen.
but
I can go more. I think I thought of another
Sure
5.
you do. I do also have a lot of arrows, and this links to that and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's where it gets a little bit difficult and stuff like that. Is that because like Mikkel goes on his 5th one, he's like Skull Cave, Banda, the Phantom's World, and and then like Stephen talked about the Oath, and then there was like 4 or 5 elements that went into the Oath, and
it was actually Stephen talking about the Oath, because absolutely that's number 1 for me, and I think it is for all of us. So I actually went to Phantom Wiki and looked up what the Oath actually is, word for word, because then what does come out of that. And Mikkel, you mentioned about how the Phantom is not a punisher, not a gritty, vengeful character. According to Phantom Wiki, the first version of the Oath was, I swear vengeance against the Sing, against all piracy, greed, and cruelty. So that idea of I swear vengeance, that does set up a vengeful hero, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But I mean, it's more, I would say, if you read the first, the Sing Brotherhood, you also see that he's not going around killing everyone. He just wants them to be knocked down and brought to justice. So, the vengeance is a strong word, but his action shows that it's more bring to justice.
Yeah, and vengeance has been dropped out of the Oath. Like I think, and this says that the wording of the Oath kept varying slightly from story to story, but the most common variant that we would all probably know and love is, I swear to devote my life to the destruction of piracy, greed, and cruelty in all their forms, and my sons and their sons shall follow me. So, I think that does capture the ethical behaviour that you're talking about there, Mikkel, because it's piracy, greed, and cruelty in all their forms, and that can there's so many stories. That's life, So that's fantastic. And then the dynasty idea, sons and their sons shall follow me. But it's that Oath, and it's that it's that attitude, and it's that attitude of, I'm now going to, whatever my life was doing, whatever direction, whatever path I was on, that's it, I'm stopped. I'm now devoting my life to being good and fighting for good. And I'm going to sell my son and my grandson and his son and his son all into the same, down the same river. So I think the top person would do that, yeah.
And that is so great in, is it the third or the son of, no, it's the third Phantom, right? That really wanted to be an actor. And then when his father is on the deathbed, then he changes his mind and becomes the Phantom, because somehow he wanted to do it then.
Yeah.
He goes into it.
Yeah. So for my first one, I've got the Oath, obviously, and I'm going to bring the dynasty hero and that ethical behavior and just that fighting for what is good in any way together. Second, I think, and we've said this, the rings as well, for all the reasons that have been said. They're just it's not, if you don't have those rings, you're not the Phantom. Full stop. That's how you know you're the Phantom. There's only one of those set of rings around, and that's why it's a big deal. If an imposter takes it or whatever, you need the ring. Then I had the legend of the Phantom, and it's interesting because the Oath doesn't actually say, and then pretend to be a ghost. So they build that legend because they're just ordinary men, like Stephen said. Yes, very athletic, jungle trained, and all the rest of it, but just people. And so the comics that or the stories where you build on that fear that people have for you, because you could be a ghost, you're just out of the shadows, you're more mystery than man. it talks to what you were saying before, Stephen, about the only so many people have seen his face or know that he's not 400 years old. That's really crucial, and the fact that they've built that over generations and the way that you can use that, I think, is a really important, unique element of the Phantom. Fourth, I've got the costume, and I tend to agree actually, Stephen, with what you said. The more I see, and I think we mentioned this last time, the more I see of the changing costumes of different eras, the less I really like it. Although I can, grant that over, I've got no idea what my grandfather saw, and this is all in the days before cameras and stuff. So if the grandfather describes a man all dressed in purple with a mask on, well, this still fits, even though there's no ruffles or whatever anymore.
So on your fourth one, which you had the costume, where do you go with what? Because Stephen put the costume and the rings together as one, and I see a lot of merit with that. Would you? Because the rings and the costume,
well, the rings are part of the costume in a sense, aren't they? Only the person who's wearing the rings should wear the costume, and the skull motif on the belt buckle and all that sort of stuff. So, good. All right, that gives me one back.
It gives you one more to do.
Skull Cave, I think, has got to be it. Now, I'm just going to stick, I know Phantom Country, where do you stop? But I'm really just going to say Skull Cave, and by extension, I guess, a Deep Woods. Now, we know what that is for the Phantom, and it has been for 400 years, but I think of the sci-fi Phantom, which lots of people didn't like, but at least he still had a Skull Cave. So that was, in whatever form it is, his Fortress of Solitude or whatever, but a Skull Cave in a Deep Woods, a hidden place that is just his. It works really well in the jungle setting, obviously, but be open to other interpretations.
So what about like the Phantom 2040? Is that the other interpretation where he's not in Africa, but he's got that Fortress of Solitude, I guess, where it's still that element. He's still got the skull, the, what do you call it, the Chronicles, he's got the skull throne.
Exactly.
So it's like you're watching that and you're going, okay, he might not be in Africa, but it's still our Phantom.
It is still our Skull Cave. Yeah, that's part of why those ones, particularly 2040, worked so well, I think, because they were considerate of the sorts of things that we're talking about. So
no, that's very good. One more.
Last one, I'm going to say Old Jungle Sayings, and I think that they're excellent because what they do is they build on both the legend and the dynasty elements. Because someone saw, which was it, the 8th Phantom who did the 12 tasks?
No, it was the 21st who did the 12 tasks.
No, but his grandfather had done it, or his great grandfather as well.
Oh, you're talking about there was the 3 tasks with the rope people.
Rope people, that's right. That's what I'm talking about.
So moving the boulder, fighting the forest giants, and running and being able to run away from the
to stay alive overnight or something.
Stay alive while the tribe are hunting him.
Yeah. So for instance, that could have been an origin, and we don't know the origin of most old jungle sayings, and that's entirely appropriate because that's the nature of them. But you could imagine that someone's seen the Phantom push this boulder over. Phantom is strong as an ox, and suddenly that's an old jungle saying. And so all of those instances of unreal Phantom activity that lead to the beginning of an old jungle saying, they all work together to build the legend, and that So I think that they're a very important part as well. It helps keep the story together.
Yeah, no, very good point. All right. Anyone want to raise anything about those 5 before we move on?
Well, what are your 5?
Okay, so my 5, I think you're right. The oath is, the big granddaddy of them all. For me, what makes the Phantom so special is his oath and the fact that it's passed from generation to generation. Now, as a father of daughters, I've become a feminist, and I'm now going generation to generation. And Dan knows what I'm talking about. You do change once you have kids, and once you have daughters. And Mikkel, I know you've got a daughter as well, so it's amazing how you change when you have kids and daughters.
See, I've got 2 sons, so it must go.
And I got a son, so I'm fine with it too.
Yeah.
You guys
But
just kids.
yeah, but it's just it's generational, that oath, and the fact is, like you watch the superhero movies now, you read the superhero comics, it's some doofus or who gets lucky and stumbles upon some ooze, or finds a ring, or it's something like that, where the Phantom he's trained for his whole life. He's been raised, and he's like, when I grow up, I don't want to be a fireman or a police officer. I'm going to follow in my footsteps, Dad. I've been training my whole life. I know how to, fire a firearm when I'm this. I know how to trap animals. I know how to, I know the laws of the jungle. There's that oath. That's their overarching thing. That's over their life. They're fully trained. So the time
it's really he's born as the Phantom,
yeah,
and then gets the training as he goes up.
Yeah. And then by the time he's 18, 20, he is, he's not a silly little stupid teenager. He's a man who's ready to take on the world and carry on the legacy. And so for me, the oath is amazing. And I think sometimes as fans and even as creators, they can kind of just bypass the power of the oath. And it's the same as the legend, which for me is the second one. Is the legend is, again, he's not a common hero that you find in a Marvel or a DC. This is a totally different character. He is a man of mystery. So, but he works in the shadows. He's got the legend of, of the skull, the legend, all this type of stuff. But in there, I have to put in the fact that he's not known. He's not the cop on the corner where everyone knows or something. He's a man of mystery. Does he exist? Yes, he does. No, he doesn't. Yes, he does. My great-great-grandfather saw him, and I get really annoyed with comics and with stories created by creators, and I think this is not their fault. I think it's the editor's fault, to be honest, where like they're walking around and they're going, "Oh, hi, Phantom." Like there was in the Herm story, the Phantom in his costume is just strolling down the main street, and then he just walks past the guards, and they're like, "Hello, Phantom," and the Phantom's like, "Hello, Bill. How's your son?" "Oh yeah, he's very good." And that's not my Phantom. That was a legend.
That was one of those real moments reading that we go, this is completely wrong. They don't know what they're doing. I no longer respect for this story.
Whereas if he was doing that in the jungle, and people, he'd know who the royal, or the chief families are, or the chiefs and the chief's son. He might not know everybody in the tribe, but he will know that that person's a Longo, or that person's Wambezi, or that person's a Mori.
But he's a man of mystery.
Oh yeah, and that'd be so. That was the Phantom. No way. And I'm 50 years old. I've finally seen this Phantom as he's gone through the jungle. That type of thing.
I don't have any problem with the Phantom actually visiting villages, and
I think that's good.
Yeah, agree with that.
What about you, Mikkel? Are you, where are you on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I was nodding. Like, I think in the jungle he usually wears his tights. Because he wouldn't wear the Mr. Walker uniform in the jungle. That would just be weird. So, I mean, it wouldn't be.
It's weird anyway, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's weird anyway. But I mean, it wouldn't be strange that all the Moris and Wambezis that they greet him like, "Hi, Phantom." But yeah, when he's in Morristown or New York or anything like that, he shouldn't use it unless he's using stealth, and then the only one saying hi is the one that knows him or the ones he's trying to save.
Yeah, and I really like the early Moore stories, like where he's kind of like, like he works in it's always Batman like, and I don't want to use that because we know the Phantom came before Batman, but you know, he works in the shadows, and you know,
You say Batman like, but really it was Phantom like, and Batman
Yeah.
stole from Phantom.
yeah,
Phantom in the city. That's all.
yeah. But I guess when you say the word Batman, like, you kind of get a bit of a picture of what I'm talking about, unfortunately. So number 3 would have to be the old jungle sayings, for everything you said, Dan. But I also think it adds to the mysteriousness of the Phantom, but it also adds to the legend, and you know, and that of the Phantom as well, because it's like, you know, when he moves, jungle cats stay. You know, or he moves quieter than jungle cats, or you know, he's got 1,000 ears and 1,000 eyes, and you know, it adds to the legend of the Phantom. It adds to the mystery of the Phantom, and you're not really sure where he is, what he is, who he is he real, and is he not? And I've made this point before, but I think every single story needs at least one jungle saying in it. If you can't write a Phantom story that you can fit an old jungle saying in it, it's not a Phantom story.
Actually, that's one point I really agree with you on that one. I really like when you first said that one. I don't know, whenever you first said it, I thought, yeah, I agree. I don't always agree with Jermaine, but I'm agreeing with him on that one.
I'll agree with that too. I think it should be mandatory, at least one per story.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I would add like something more meta is like it's like these shows like Master of the Universe or Sailor Moon or Transformers. Like once in the episode they have this cutscene when they do their transformation, and it almost feels like that when the old jungle saying comes up, and it's like, oh no, it's that thing. And I remember
Yeah.
like
Be like Defenders
reading
of the Earth.
Upon my jungle birthright, I call upon the power of 10 tigers.
And when I read with my son, like earlier when he was younger, the only thing he read was only when he saw the old jungle saying boxes. Those he wanted to read.
Hmm.
So it's something like it pops up and it makes, oh, now the story really gets some action.
Yeah, and it's, again, it's something unique to our Phantom. Like, you don't have old Batman sayings, or old Superman sayings, or young Superman. You know, you don't have those type of sayings. It's fully unique, and I think, and our Phantom is a unique superhero, and I think we need to encourage it, or what's the word? Celebrate the uniqueness of our hero. Name me another superhero that is generational. There's not many in the same family that is generational. You know, there's a couple where I think Green Lantern passes the ring on, but that's passed on to random people or to, you know, other people. It's not the same lineage and stuff like that. There's not many other superheroes where that happens. Now, I will admit, number 4 and 5, I'm not really sure on where I want to go. There's, and I'm not just saying this so I can kind of throw out a couple. So I'm not really sure. If I was to kind of say it, would have to be the outfit in Rings. Like, they're probably not. They have to be it because, again, it's what makes the Phantom. You know, the outfit in the Rings, and you know, and stuff like that. So
it's to speak to that point. I think it's weird when, and there's not many of them, but when there's a story where the Phantom does not appear in his costume, if he's Kid Walker, if he's Mr. Walker the whole time, it occurs, and it just feels a bit weird.
Yeah. So you and we've all put it in there. It's, you know, and what I'm saying is it's nothing new from what everyone else has got in there. I think our top 4 are pretty much all the same. So a 5th one, look, I don't really have a 5th one at the moment. It could be the Rough and Roughnecks. It could be the Justice bit, but could that be a part of the Oath? The witty, the humour bit. You know, I will admit I don't really have a 5th one, so to speak. So it could be a handful of those, which I kind of like, but I'm not really sure if they are as important as those 4 that I just made mention or not. So I'm going to stick with 4. For me, those 4 are the top 4 most important ones.
Well, for what it's worth, I think, and as I said, I pulled up the oath on Phantom Wiki, and I'd actually encourage anyone to do that and have a look at it, because I think, and maybe this might be a screen worth sharing, Jeremy. While that's coming, just to explain the Oath of the Skull, the Oath of the Skull page on Wikipedia, Phantom Wiki, I should say, is probably pretty much what we're talking about in terms of a Bible. If this would, I think this would be really effective as the Bible entry for the oath, because it gives the wording, the original wording, as I said, and the most common variant of that, and the circumstances in which it's used, when the oath is read, and then a gallery of images of from the dailies, from the Sundays, Gold Key, RGE, Team Fantomen, Buste, Moonstone, like every different publisher, and a version of what it looks like. So I think this could be a really good starting point. I'm not sure how to stop sharing the screen now.
up near the top. But and I guess that's the point, is where we talked about at the start, is like a new comic writer will come in and say, okay, I know who the Phantom is, I know he wears purple, I know he wears blue, but I'm not totally versed in it. And let's be honest, there are going to be creators that are like that. I want to become immersed into the Phantom. Okay, I've got a list of important elements from King Features. Okay, number one is the oath, and it's got the variants. It's got the examples of the oath, which is what that showed us. There was half a dozen to 10 different examples of each Phantom and of Phantoms swearing the oath. So it's like if someone who's never drawn a Phantom story before goes, I need to redraw that. That thing at my, that motif, that sequence in my comic, they can get it right because they've got examples of how that is. So it's like, oh, that's the oath. Oh, and he's a man of legend. He's a man of mystery. And, oh, okay, not every Tom, Dick and Harry in Morristown knows who the Phantom is. The Phantom doesn't walk around, so it gives the writer understanding, wisdom, or knowledge of who our character is. So then he's not writing a story where the Phantoms or she is not. Very good point, Stephen. Thank you. Where they are not writing a story of the Phantom.
To keep these feminists on the toes, Steve.
Walking down Main Street of Morristown or New York in his costume, and that's why I think this is important, is because it means we're not focused on these little mistakes. We can actually focus on what they should be good at, and that is actually writing a good story.
And there does need to be some variation available on the theme too.
Oh, definitely.
You talk about Mr. Walker there. Paul Ryan started drawing Kit Walker in a bomber jacket rather than the trench coat, which has been traditional forever. Cy Barry started drawing it without the cross hatching, which Wilson McCoy had used, and so there's variations on that, but it's always still Mr. Walker is the alter ego, and he's still got the sun, because you can't see his eyes, and he's the hat, and he's. I don't. Maybe 6'6" is a bit hard to be inconspicuous.
That's probably a bit too tall. But when you said
you might be able to still get away with being,
I probably made him a little bit too tall. 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah.
But in regards to the, sorry.
Oh, but then variation, because there's the dwarf Phantom as well, the fourth son.
Oh yes.
So. But
in regards to the trench coat or the bomber jacket, and I've put this one down. The old jungle saying is, sometimes he walks the street as an ordinary man. Well, an ordinary man could wear, what he wears should match this saying. So, how many people do you see wearing a trench coat walking down the street? So, whatever he's wearing is what the ordinary man will wear. So, if he wants to wear a bomber jacket, he wears a bomber jacket. If he's wearing a trench coat, he's wearing a trench coat. If he's wearing a hoodie and tracky dacks, he's wearing a hoodie and tracky dacks. He's blending in, hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, and I think when you say that, you raise a really good point. Is that it can't be so rigid, and I think one of you's made mention of it before. You can't be so rigid where there's no room for flexibility or anything like that. Like, I like the change of the bomber jacket because I think the trench coat is a little bit ridiculous. especially in today's society, where a bomber
I
jacket.
thought it looked
and
cool, but you know, it's not an ordinary man. I
Yeah.
don't see many people wearing a hat and trench coat down the street. If you saw someone walking down the street with a hat and trench coat,
I would probably cross the road.
it's not like that's no
And-
longer the 30s now. It's
Yeah.
nearly into the
Would you ask,
2030s.
in Europe, Mikkel, do people wear trench coats, or is this just our Australian experience talking?
No, I mean, and fedoras aren't that common either. So, but I also think like this: that he wears ordinary clothes, but isn't it weird that old jungle thing is only used for the current Phantom? It's never when like the fifth Phantom is wearing his coat and high boots. Then there's no jungle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Oh, but you see the old style Phantoms, and they've got, you know, sometimes wearing that big hat, and they've got that cape type thing, and what they wear, they don't quite cover the costume, but they are wearing things that, well,
Ordinary.
there's been a lot of, I would say, Team Phantom stories that, you know, they're wearing a big white puffy shirt, if you like, and
Yeah, but I think that's
yeah.
Mikkel's point, is that they do that, but they don't use the old jungle saying in the moment, and they should.
Yes,
Yeah, they
yes,
should.
that's
Yeah.
yes,
Should.
they should, yes.
You were
And-
insisting there had to be one. I
Yeah,
think that's the rule, Joe.
Yeah.
So let's get on to T and to Glenn and to Andreas and anyone who'll listen who's important.
well, whether they might listen, but whether they actually do it. But again, and I think that's the importance of good editors, and I think Frew and Team Phantom Men are lucky in the sense that they have Phantom fans at the moment in charge of the editing. Andreas is a Phantom fan. He knows the Phantom very well. Glenn has been reading the Phantom for, dare I say it, and I'll probably get in trouble for it.
Let's just say a long
Decades.
time.
Hello, Glenn. But the point is that, you know, they're fans, and so, you know, they're Frew and Team Phantom Men are lucky in the sense that they can pick up on this type of stuff. But if you're an editor of, say, like Dynamite or who had the comic, or Moonstone were also smart in the sense that they got Brian Shedden and Ed Rhodes in to do their spot checking as well. But so they were kind of smart in doing that. But this is where the Fandom Bible can help those editors or those writers or the editorial team that don't have the super fans or the fans on board.
I think you absolutely got to give Mikkel Sol credit, because he was self-admitted not a Phantom fan.
Yeah.
I think he put the work in
Yeah.
because he did an excellent job of making genuine Phantom stories. And I think, some of the stuff that he wrote and certainly the stuff that he edited, he made sure that it fit very well within the Phantom universe. But it shouldn't be probably the amount of work that he had to do to be able to something like what we're talking about, a bit more prescriptive, but not a guide. But is a guide. That would have made that a lot easier for him.
I think in the podcast that he had with us, I can't remember. Do you guys remember the podcast that Mikkel did with us? He made mention of that. I think they actually had bounded the comics, and I think I remember even like a couple of Instagram posts that he did. He just had it was just a photo of like 3 or 4 of these hardbound books, and he was like, I think one of them was like homework for the weekend or something like that. Now, I'm more than happy to read just, you know, hundreds of Phantom comics. That would be a brilliant homework session for me. But
call it your job and get paid for it.
Yeah, how good's that?
But yeah, you're right. He did put in the effort, and I think completely agree with you.
Someone like whoever's in charge of Dynamite and various things. But Dan Herman, we know, is a massive Phantom fan, so it's a difficult one. I guess he likes the art more than the stories, perhaps. And forgive me, Dan, if you're listening to this and I've got you completely mistaken there. But it should have been easier for the Dynamite editor, for the Hermes Press author to find these things and not make such heinous mistakes.
Yeah, and because it ruins the experience for the Phantom fans, and then, you know, when these publishers are going out on a limb trying to create something for us fans, and when they create these stories with, dare I say it, silly mistakes in it, it ruins the experience for fans. Then the fans aren't going to buy the comic, and then they're probably going to lose money on it. So they're not going to renew the license, and which means they're not going to continue doing Phantom comics. And then we're going to have what we've got right now, and that is no US publisher is currently publishing new Phantom stories, which is not what we want.
Absolutely.
So, has anyone else got anything to say, or should we maybe go over some of these other lists and other things that some other Phantom fans and creators have made mention, and then it might spark a bit of conversation?
Just thinking, like you're talking about these creators and give them some flexibility and all that sort of stuff, and give them this thing so they know what to do. And you're talking about Dynamite and Hermes going off on a limb and trying something different. It's important. Well, in my head, it's important to cater to your audience already. There's already an audience there, and if you don't create something that they can relate to or think, yeah, this is the character, well, then they're not going to buy it in the first place. Look after them before looking after trying to get new people in. It's the old one in the hand's worth two in the bush type deal. So if you cater to these elements that we've just said, starters, well, that brings in the fans, and then hopefully your license gets renewed, and you can get more and bring more people in, and you have a bit of freedom a little bit later on. But you really got to start off making sure that you've got the character and the characterization and the universe right before going off and branching out and doing other things.
So you make a it's a good point. So with obviously when we started this conversation, we talked about kind of like the hats that we wear. Dan's the Forkist, postmodernist and stuff like that. So, and we talked about Doc Axel as an example. Luaga as president is probably another example, and all that. Is there any Phantom elements that you could explore about not being a Phantom element, or are these Phantom elements so engraved in stone that they have to be there? Well, I guess a good example is the ring or the costume. With Lee Falk has explored stories where someone wore the costume and undid years of the Phantom's work, or the ring was worn by a bad guy, or So, is there room for these Phantom elements to be explored or broken? And
you can't break the ring. The ring is that's got to be there.
But I guess the fact the Phantom did lose the ring.
Yeah, and then bad stuff happened because of it.
And
then he got it back. That's pivotal to the character.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you lose it, but I'm not saying like he never wears the ring again. But there has been.
I'm actually agreeing with you. I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
I'm saying, if someone did a story like that and it has been done in the past, then that'll be a huge story, because that is so pivotal to the character. And if the character no longer has the ring, how do they know that they're really him? And you could really explore that, but you'd need to get that ring back on him by the end of the story.
Yeah.
And
Any other thoughts?
I would say then you're still having the fact that there are rings, even though they are gone. So that would, in my opinion, it would still be within the same. That would not be breaking or exploring. That's just could be a good or bad story, but it doesn't. That would not be a deal breaker for me. It would be a deal breaker for me if it would be a Phantom story where it doesn't have any ring and there's no mention of it.
Yeah.
That would be the
agreed. Yeah, especially if there's a fight or something, or there's just no use of the skull, or there is a fight and there's no skull mark, that sort of thing. Yeah, and not mentioned. You agree with you there, Michael?
So
there's never been a ring.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, for instance, like if you, yeah. Okay. I was just trying to think, because you don't want to like create stuff so rigid where there's nothing for, excuse me, for Phantom creators to explore
A good
these
example,
elements and stuff like that.
an example of when someone tried with a very minor element, it was a Team Phantom story there where the well outside the Jungle Patrol was destroyed, and I can't. Jen,
Yep.
you may know the author.
And the Luaga series, it would have been, Donnie
Yeah.
and Venule, I believe, from memory.
Perhaps. So it was part of Luaga not being president. So we're already going down that schism. And then all of a sudden they blow up the well outside the Jungle Patrol. Now that's I joked before about an element being Dr. Axel's nationality being outside my top 100. The well outside the Jungle Patrol is outside my top 50, probably more important, but it's not a big deal. But it was jarring to read that story and to go over that page and see the well blow up. And it was supposed to be jarring. I get that. But what, you then remove the well? What, I guess my question there is why? Is that one story going to be so great that we lose that trope, we lose that element forever? Because I'm with Mikkel, what he said right at the start, you want each story to follow the last and there to be a continuity. And so you can't just suddenly have the well back.
And so this is such a great example because they haven't put the well back in Sweden,
but they've created another passage for the Phantoms.
There's
to
another
still
passage
do
that fell through, so they have a cave system that he can go to. But I mean, I think they should just as Laga went back to be president. Maybe the Unknown Commander should put up the well again as a monument or something, just so the daily strips do not contradict Team Phantom strips. Because nowadays they won't even show him going down, how he goes to the safe. They just show him opening the safe underneath without any explanation.
That's a shame, because it's a fun little thing. They didn't have to destroy it, and it's just fun. It's a little thing that is Phantom. And unique, and you get a smile because you remember the Wilson McCoy version where you see the cross section of the tunnel. It's all very straight lines, like it's been deliberately mined. It's just that little bit of nostalgia. It's a trope, and it's just that's where if you want to break any of these things, you take a risk.
Yeah. And if I would break something, I would break the office where there's only a safe in the room. I think that's pretty stupid because then someone should understand how this happens. So I think it should be a fully furnished office there, just that he uses the safe.
Yeah.
See, I've even gone a little bit further. I've actually put this one on my list of top 50 or 46, whatever I got up to then. Well, one of the things was that the Unknown Commander stays unknown, but underneath that I've got, rather than the safe. Now the safe was great, up until the 90s even. The safe is still a great means of getting that communication to the Jungle Patrol quickly. But since the advent of the internet and email and all that sort of stuff and text messaging, I'm thinking like a block sender or address or still Unknown Commander at deepwoods or at junglepatrol.com, that type of thing.
Well, they should.
I'd love the well. The well was great, and like you said, when they blew it up, bang! They did what? How dare they blow up the well? It was really jarring. But now in 2021, they don't need they don't need to have that letter in there to get that that immediate communication that you can just text it, you can just email it.
You reckon there's just a on the Colonel Weeks's or Werriboo's desktop, there's a little well icon with a number of notifications for basically.
But they didn't know about the well. They didn't know that the well was the way they got the message. It should be a safe that's got the notifications on it.
In the story, which the commander is dead, which was written by Don Avenue, so that was a good guess. This was published in Fru 1091 and Sweden 1994. So we're talking 25 years ago, basically. This story was created.
And Mikkel's saying that they haven't had the well in his comics since.
Yeah. So interestingly, the story was voted best story in Sweden and Norway the twice it was published, 1994 and 2007. I thought it was a great story. Now, I have to admit, I'm kind of with Stephen where I think if I was to put this down as the unknown commander as a trope, it will be the unknown commander as the trope. Yeah, the well and the tunnel and the safe is kind of cool, but as long as you don't know who the unknown commander is and there's, a way the messages get to the colonel or the person in charge, that for me would be the trope. But obviously listening to Mikkel and Dan, for you the trope includes the well and the tunnel. So
I mean,
you go, Mikkel.
yeah, I mean, for me, it should be shown that it has existed. So even though they would change it to like a wireless printer that prints his message that he sends from his computer at the Skull Cave, they should still say like earlier they used this. It shouldn't erase the
some sort of reference to it.
Yeah.
I like the idea of having that safe icon or app or something, with the notification. That I reckon that's great. I like that.
Bit like that. What's it in the old Batman?
Careful, Jermaine. You and I are agreeing. Well, I'm agreeing.
Oh, no, mate.
Yeah, this is.
There's a lot of agreeing happening.
You're too tired, Stephen.
Usually, I'm thinking, bloody Jermaine, no.
But no. If you listen to what we've just said, we've basically all agreed on that. We can get rid of the well, but it's the.
We've lived without it for 25 years.
No,
it was an awesome thing.
I said a very.
Don't get rid of it. It has existed.
Yeah. It has existed. Yeah.
The concept of it, because I said earlier about the Skull Cave, and it could be you reconfigure the Skull Cave to be anywhere, but you're still going to have a Skull Cave. So we're talking about the same sort of thing, I suppose. You reconfigure the way that message goes, but it should really, it'd be great if you could envisage it so it goes from a well to a safe. And whatever.
Yeah. But a more modern, I guess the Phantom kind of does have to involve, i.e., with the radio room. He probably doesn't use that big contraption in some of the Cybari stories. He's probably using, Zoom like we are, or something like that.
Well, that's one of the other things I've put down here. How X-Band has now developed over the years, and now he's fully decked out, got the computer, but they need to be careful. It run the risk of becoming like a back computer, like a computer that can just do everything. And I don't think it should be a back computer.
I don't think they've gone down that path yet.
They haven't, and I hope they don't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of agreeing tonight.
The Phantom does have a treasure, or is self-funded and never needs to worry for money. So probably does have cutting-edge technology, not necessarily supercomputer type stuff though.
Yeah.
But in my world, I would like to see the current Phantom, the 21st Phantom, to not be that tech savvy. Maybe he knows how to operate a computer, of course, but maybe not be able to.
He's not a hacker.
Do hacking. Yeah, he shouldn't
be able to hack. But I also think
gets other people in for that because he's got his jungle training. He's highly trained on that, and so he doesonic need like supersonic scopes or whatever to sharpshoot or whatever. He's got that natural ability rather than having to rely on all these techno gadgets.
Yeah, that's probably where Duncan's recent the third part of his Prince Rex saga did it well with that double page spread of the what Heloise's friend who was a much better tech savvy than he was. So use.
And there was also this story which Messages of the Jungle. Which had the guy who came in and fixed the radio and stuff like that as well.
I thought that was great. I liked that.
All right, guys. So anything else you want to kind of add, or should we quickly go over what some of our Phantom friends have commented on, and then we can kind of maybe wrap it up?
Let's.
Yep. Okay, so in no particular order, just starting from the start, there's going to be a lot of crossover and repetitiveness of what we've kind of already discussed, but we're just going to kind of like say what they say and then the person who made mention of it. So Tony D. Paul talked about the Phantom Country, which is, the deep woods, the waterfall, Skull Cave, Banda.
The waterfall, I haven't put that in.
And then also that he is a family man, which I know that you made mention in one of yours as well, Stephen. A few Phantom fans, which I think Stephen talked about it, is the rough on roughnecks. And that's a real Phantom trope, the rough on roughnecks. So some of the Phantom creators that we talked about was Tony DePaul, Glenn Lumsden, Duncan Munro, and Ankit as well. So it's a very interesting. That was one of the ones that have probably got the most mentions.
I'm going to wrap that up inside the Oath, because the Oath
Yep.
talks about destruction of piracy, greed, and cruelty. So I think we can sneak that in that way.
I also think it will probably go in with Stephen as well about the highly tuned jungle trained as well. Like not being knocked on the head, his fighting skills, his physical stature and stuff like that. Which I do want to touch upon this afterwards, is talking about how many of these 46, 50 elements that we've that Stephen's got and stuff like that could actually be kind of merged together. But we'll quickly talk about that after we've done this. The humanity,
There'd be a few.
the humanity, the family man, and the centered side of things. This is another one that Tony DePaul and Ankit made mention of. And then a few guys. So this is, again, Tony, Duncan, Daniel Brogner, who is a Patreon, and Nick Moles, who is another Patreon. They talked about the lore of the Phantom, like the Oath, the legend, the 500 years. Again, the rings, cannot see the Phantom's face, the tradition. These are 1 and 2 on pretty much all of our lists as well. So it's fair to say that, that is probably, those are kind of like the top 2, basically, of probably everyone's list. The ordinary man with heroic traits like the bravery, the integrity, and stuff like that. We've talked before about what Billy Zane's, probably his most famous Phantom quote ever is that the Phantom's not a superhero, he's superhumane. That kind of goes in with that. Tony DePaul's also made mention of it. Sean Bassett, who's another Patreon, and also Ty Theodore, who's another Patreon as well. The justice element, which is maybe a part of the Oath, which is the ethic, the ethic of the Phantom, the fighting against piracy, caring for the downtrodden, caring for the jungle people, the compassion, being noble. This is another one mentioned by Sean Bassett, Ty Theodore, Duncan Munro, and Ankit.
The idea of the mythical legend, the mystery elements of the Phantom. So we've sort of touched on this, but coming out of the shadows, scaring bad guys, not known by everybody. So Glenn Lumsden, Andreas Eriksson, and Shane Foley and Kit Mitra all mentioned that one. I think we've explored that pretty well, and yeah, it is absolutely fundamental and a key. Not completely unique to the Phantom, but certainly one of the things that he does very, very well. Mikkel talked about the wit and the humour of the Phantom, and having that dry wit and dropping the one-liners is absolutely one of the things we love, and we talk about every time we have a story that includes those sorts of elements. We love highlighting those. And quoting from those when we do our reviews. So Glenn Lumsden again, Duncan, Shane, and Kit all mentioned that one. And Phantom lore, it's slightly off the lore. Shadow of World War. Glenn Lumsden's mentioned that. How do I interpret that one, Germ? So he's not vigilante, but are we down that path?
Yeah. So it's kind of like not your cop, but he's kind of off centre of the wall. But he's he still is. He's the incorruptible police officer, but doesn't have the limitations that the police do, perhaps.
Yeah, he takes down ruthless tyrants and do not follow their law because it's the bad law.
Yeah, really good point. So because you can have democratic law, you can have oppressive laws and that sort of thing, but Phantom law in that sense. I like that. The old jungle sayings has got a mention from Duncan Munro. The fact that he's an exceptional fighter, we've talked about that as well. Shane Foley has given us that one. Peter Anderson and Daniel Brogner have talked particularly about the Mr. Walker alias. and we've discussed that one as well. It's an important part because you can't have the Phantom just walking around in his tights all over the place. And Daniel Brogdon has also raised the point that I think, Steve, brought up about the affinity with animals, not being able to train them, not killing animals or humans wherever possible, only kills where needed, that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of probably a lot of crossover with a few things that we have already talked about. But again, I guess it goes to show that when we put a call out for what's important to you, particularly to the Patreons and a few creators there, that we keep coming back to these similar things, which I guess highlights in a way how easy it would be, and I say that as someone who is absolutely not going to do it because I don't have the time, but how easy it might be to start putting this together for a company like King Features, who could devote somebody to it for a week, you'd reckon, and come up with something that was pretty handy.
We would love to hear the Phantom creators, the Phantom fans, all of your opinions, your thoughts, what we've missed, what we haven't missed. Add it to the comments. Email us, which is our email address, which is chroniclechamber@gmail.com. You can find us on chroniclechamber.com. Now, is there anything else you guys want to quickly talk about or add before we end off? Because this has been a great discussion, a great starting point in my opinion.
I guess I would just say that, like, in terms of getting other people's contributions and all the rest of it, it's so important because we've used the terminology, this being the Bible. The Bible has got the book of Mark, the book of Luke. I think tonight what we've come up with is our Phantom Bible with the books of Jermaine, Mikkel, Steve, and Dan. And if you've got a different book, a different perspective, and you'd like to throw that in, by all means.
That's all the same person. It's all about the same person.
Exactly.
It is. Very good. No. So, look, this has been fun. There's been a lot of agreement, which I think is a good thing because it shows that we are on the right path. And we're not talking about minor things here. We're talking about the key elements. And if we can't agree about that, obviously we're reading a different character. So I'm surprised, but I shouldn't be surprised that we're having a lot of agreements with the key elements that we think is important to our Phantom. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, listeners, for listening to us. Without you guys, none of this is possible. Again, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or the various apps like Podbean, Player FM, Castbox, Listen Notes, or you can watch us on YouTube. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're also on, I'm missing one, Instagram. And again, our website is chroniclechamber.com and our email is chroniclechamber@gmail.com. From myself, thank you for listening. Happy Phantoming. And guys,
Happy Phantoming.
Happy Phantoming.
The skull of the man who killed his dad. He said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die." The Phantom, the ghost who walks. The Phantom, enemies beware. The Phantom's always there, but you won't mind the Phantom. He fights